In this presentation, we will discuss the Paycheck Protection Program and the SBA Disaster Loan Assistance Program. These are going to be new programs that are being put in place as a response to the COVID-19 problem and the economic impacts of it. Now, as we go into this, just note that these are obviously new programs. That means nobody is an expert on these programs, and these programs are constantly changing in terms of possibly the regulations themselves, and certainly with regards to the implementation, because they're trying to implement these things as quick as possible. So when you're talking about how to do the application process, how is all this going to be integrated and working together, hopefully that will become easier as the process goes and the application process will be improving. Clearly, they're trying to roll this out as quickly as possible. Also, just note that nobody is an expert on this at this point in time because it's a new law. All we can do is basically go through it and see what we have at this point in time. I mean, even the people who wrote the laws at this point in time aren't even experts on it, don't know what exactly is going to happen at this point because, they're going to be new laws. So also when new laws come out, especially with regards to money and lending money, you could end up with some misinformation out there about the laws that people are interpreting. So you want to, get multiple sources, look this over, look other things over, and then keep getting updated on this kind of information because, like I say, it will change as we go. Also note that I recommend getting advice. This is not legal advice here or any kind of accounting. Every business is independent or unique, and so you have unique circumstances, and so you want to get advice about your particular business. I know that's a little bit difficult right now, or it could be with regards to the economy and the social distancing and all that. But just note what we're going to do here is just look it over. We'll glance over the law and give you just our thoughts on it. Now, the first thing we recommend doing is going to the source here. So you want to go to the source, and you can go to the websites themselves and just read over this. So we have the U.S. Department of the Treasury, and you can search for the assistance for small businesses and find that. The URL is up top. If you can see that, home.treasury.gov and so on. We'll give a link in the description below as well. And then the other program is the SBA, or U.S. Small Business Administration Disaster Loan Assistance Program. And so you can go to this page, and this is basically a streamlined kind of application page. Now, first of all, between these two, you might say, hey, your first thought would probably be if between the two of them. So let's just read through this, and I'll just give you my thoughts on it. So assistance for the small business. The Paycheck Protection Program prioritizes millions of Americans' employees by small business by authorizing up to $349 billion towards job retention and certain other expenses. Now, note that that's going to be a lot of money that is going towards it, but also note that it's a fixed amount of money, and therefore there is going to be a time restriction. They're trying to get this money into the economy as quick as possible. Therefore, once it's gone, it's unknown as to whether more money will go in. So you would think then that would imply that there's going to be some kind of time restrictions, possibly, most likely, first come, first serve for qualifying applicants, you would think. So then small businesses and eligible nonprofit organizations, veteran organizations, and tribal businesses described in the Small Business Act, as well as individuals who are self-employed or independent contractors, are eligible if they meet the program size standards. So I'll just go through these quick PDF files. They're not that long, and just give you what I think on these items. So if we go into the first one here, Small Business Paycheck Protection Program. The Paycheck Protection Program provides small businesses with funds to pay up to 8 weeks of payroll costs, including benefits. So obviously the focus here is going to be on the payroll. Their focus is twofold, it seems to me. One, to try to keep people in employment so that when this is over, we maintain the employment. And two, to get money into the economy. So remember, every time there's a problem with the economy, the typical thought is that if you can pump money into the economy, the money will then have a multiplier effect. So those two things are what they want. They actually want to give money away, and they want to give money away typically from an economic standpoint in such a way that it'll maintain employment. That's my interpretation of it. Funds can also be used to pay interest and mortgages, mortgage, rent, and utilities. So we have some other than payroll, we have some other items. And then the question is how much can be going to payroll and how much can be going to these other items. Fully forgiven. So that means we're talking like a loan here, but it's fully forgiven, meaning the hope is that they're actually going to forgive the loan, which means, that's basically, if that happens, that basically would be free money, right? So that's why this loan would probably be the favorable one if you can get it, although there's more stringent, you would think, circumstances to get it than the other loan over here. So funds are provided in the form of loans that will be fully forgiven when used for payroll costs, interest on mortgages, rent, and utilities. So that's the key. They're going to say, if you do this purpose with it, then, we'll forgive the loan. So due to likely high subscription, at least 75% of the forgiven amount must have been used for payroll. So payroll is the emphasis here, 75%. So you're going to have to, be able to show that, or want to be able to show that in some way, shape, or form. Going to need your accountant, most likely to help you to get those numbers down, to be able to prove this, to be able to qualify and make sure you're qualifying for the forgiveness of the loan. Loan payments will also be deferred for 6 months. So that's great, deferred for 6 months. No collateral or personal guarantees are required. So that basically means that usually when you get a loan, if you get a loan like your mortgage, obviously you have to put the house on the line, right? And if you don't pay the loan back, they take the house. And in this case, no business or personal guarantees are on place, meaning the repo man's not going to come take your car, theoretically, on this one. They're just, so that would, that's good, right? You're not signing over any actual, capital assets like a house or the business itself. So that's good. Neither the government nor lenders will charge small business fees, any fees. Great, no fees, that's great. Must keep employees on the payroll. So here's the kink in it. Obviously, everybody is limited on cash. Some businesses, I'm sure, are just saying, hey, I can't pay you. I don't have the money. And they've had to let people go. So that's why they also put here, or rehire quickly. So that means that it's telling me that, if you fired someone and then you're saying, hey, maybe I can qualify for this loan, I'll try to rehire them, pull the organization, pull the team back together if it qualifies for the loan, and then see if you can get through this period with the people on board. And hopefully the hope is then by the government is that once the restrictions are over, your business will be back and you'll want to keep them anyways. So that's the idea. So, or my interpretation of the idea. Forgiveness is based on the employer maintaining or quickly rehiring employees and maintaining salary levels. Forgiveness will be reduced if full-time headcount declines or if salaries and wages decrease. So, they're really looking at the payroll and they're trying to keep, obviously, the people employed. So all small businesses eligible. Small businesses with 500 or fewer employees, including nonprofit veteran organizations, tribal concerns, self-employed individuals, sole proprietorships, and independent contractors are eligible. So that's a lot of people eligible, including those not-for-profits. So keep that in mind. Businesses with more than 500 employees are eligible in certain industries. When to apply? Starting April 3rd, 2020, small businesses and sole proprietorships can apply. Starting April 10th, 2020, independent contractors and self-employed individuals can apply. We encourage you to apply as quickly as you can because there is a funding cap. So note again, there's going to be a time restriction because they put this money. They said, hey, this money is being allocated towards this thing, and then they're going to have the starting date here. So what you want to do is you want to twofold when you're applying for these things. One, you want to do it on time, but two, you want to be prepared to do it because you're dealing with a bureaucracy. There's two things that are a problem. One is the timing of it, and the other is non-acceptance of the documentation. You don't want the documentation to be kicked back. So you want to, and we don't know exactly, it's a new thing, but you want to try to get all your information together as well as possible, and then get in there as early as possible and be ready for things to be kicked back, but have the information to just keep on, just keep on pushing, right? And that's how you, hopefully you can get the process and get the process through and complete the process. But time is a factor. How to apply? You can apply through any existing SBA 7A lender or through any federally insured depository institution, federally insured credit union, and farm credit system institution that is participating. So federally insured typically means like the bank is, federally insured. So you might want to talk to your standard lender and get more information about that. And hopefully, they can point you in the right direction to get going on this. Other Regulated lenders will be available to make these loans once they are approved and enrolled in the program. So they're trying to basically make this accessible. So again, they're trying to do all the normal routes, and they may be adding more individuals. And again, if you're a lender that's looking at this process as a way to get, for your business, then that might be an opportunity for you as well. So you should consult with your local lender as to whether it is participating. All loans will have the same terms regardless of lender or borrower. So that could actually be good for you, because again, when these things are just being rolled out, you kind of want some standardization, because the government's coming in and saying, I just want to make this standardized. So there's not going to be a lot of variant, and that's, you can kind of know what's to be expected, because it should all be the same, you would think. So a list of participating lenders as well as additional information and full terms can be found at www.sba.gov. That's www.sba.gov. The Paycheck Protection Program is implemented by the Small Business Administration with support from the Department of the Treasury. Lenders should also visit www.sba.gov or www.coronavirus.gov for more information. So you can go there for more information. We'll have a link to this website, and you can link to there from here as well. Let's go back. Let's take a look at the next one, where it says if you're a lender, more information can be found here. So now this is from the perspective of the lender. I'm thinking that less people are looking at this from that perspective, but again, it's good to know both sides of the perspective, and if you are looking at it then this is for you. So Paycheck Protection Program PPP information sheet lender who is eligible to lend. All existing SBA certified lenders will be given delegated authority to speedily process PPP loans. All federally insured depository institutions, federally insured credit unions, and Farm Credit System institutions are eligible to participate in this program. So the federally insured lenders typically say a broad set of additional lenders can begin making loans as soon as they are approved and enroll in the program. So if you want to get into that, they are looking for that. And again, the goal of the business, the goal of the government right now is to get this money out. The normal lending process, they want to go through that, and if they can get the money out faster by adding, it looks like they're looking to do that possibly. Are these loans guaranteed by the SBA? Yes, the SBA guarantees 100% of the outstanding balance, and that guarantee is backed by the full faith and credit of the United States. That's great. Are these guarantees fees? The SBA waives all SBA guarantee fees, including the upfront and annual service fees. That's great. What underwriting is required? So what do we need to basically gather in terms of underwriting in order to give the loan? So remember, if you're a lender, you're basically saying, hey, typically the thing is, I want to see if this person can repay the loan plus the interest. You're trying to make interest on the loan, and therefore you want to think of requirements. Now, this loan is being backed by the government, so they basically dictate, what are going to be the requirements, the paperwork. What do you need to get together in order to approve the loan? And once you approve the loan, that's when you get basically paid, if you're the lender. So what underwriting is required? You will need to verify that a borrower was in operation on February 15th, 2020. You will need to verify that the borrower had employees for whom the borrower paid salaries and payroll taxes. So you will need to verify the dollar amount of average monthly payroll costs, and you will need to follow applicable Bank Secrecy Act requirements. So you got to keep the information personal because it's sensitive information. So how will lenders be compensated? Processing fees will be based on the balance of the financing outstanding at the time of the final disbursement. So loans $350,000 and under 5%. Loans greater than $350,000 to $2 million, 3%. Loans greater than $2 million, 1%. So lenders may not collect any fees from the applicant. So no fee, you can't collect on the fees. This is going to be your compensation straight out up top. Who can be an agent? So what qualifies as an agent? Remember, an agent is someone who's kind of representing someone else. Typically an attorney is the classic agency kind of relationship, representing some other person's interest. An agent is an authorized representative and can B, an attorney, an accountant, a consultant, someone who prepares an applicant's application for financial assistance and is employed and compensated by the applicant, someone who assists a lender with originating, dispersing, servicing, liquidating, or litigating SBA loans, a loan broker, or any other individual or entity representing an applicant by conducting business with the SBA. How will agents be compensated? Agent fees will be paid out of lender fees. The lender will pay the agent. Agents may not collect any fees from the applicant. Okay, so and notice how they're kind of trying to standardize the fee process here, so that because there's a lot of money flowing around, that the agent's not setting the terms, and so they're trying to make it all standardized in that format. So if you're a borrower, more information can be found here. So let's take a look at that one. So now we're the borrower now from the perspective of the borrower. Paycheck Protection Program information sheet, borrowers. The Paycheck Protection Program, the PPP, authorizes up to $349 billion in forgivable loans to small businesses to pay their employees during the COVID-19 crisis. All loan terms will be the same for everyone. The loan amounts will be forgiven as long as, so again, that being the same for everyone should simplify things. That's what I get from this. That's the goal. That's what I would interpret the government's goal to be. They want these to be standardized so they can just stamp them out, right? The loan amounts will be forgiven as long as the loan proceeds are used to cover payroll costs and most mortgage interest, rent, utility costs under the 8-week period after the loan is made. So the 8-week period after the loan is paid, and employee and compensation levels are maintained. So those are the key conditions. Payroll costs are capped at $100,000 on an annualized basis for each employee. So that we have the cap for the payroll for the purposes of this, the $100,000. Due to likely high subscription, it is anticipated that not more than 25% of the forgiven amount may be for non-payroll costs. So payroll's the focus. 75%, that means you would think would be going to payroll in order to qualify. The 25% can still qualify, but for other things other than the payroll. So loan payments will be deferred for 6 months. When can I apply? Starting April 3rd, 2020, small businesses and sole proprietorships can apply for and receive loans to cover their payroll and other certain expenses through existing SBA lenders. So there is a time restriction. Remember, they have that budget in there. There's a certain amount of time you got to go, that money's going to run out. And then once it's out, then the question is if they're going to refund it or not. So starting April 10th, 2020, independent contractors and self-employed individuals can apply for, receive loans to cover their payroll and other certain expenses through existing SBA lenders. So April 3rd, small businesses and sole proprietors can apply for and receive loans to cover their payroll and other certain expenses. And then starting on April 10th, independent contractors and self-employed individuals can apply for and receive loans to cover their payroll and other certain expenses through existing SBA lenders. Okay. Other regulated lenders will be available to make those loans as soon as they are available and enroll in the program. Where can I apply? You can apply through any existing SBA lender or through any federally insured depository institution, federally insured credit union, and farm credit system institution that is participating. Other regulated lenders will be available to make these loans once they are approved and enrolled in the program. You should consult with your local lender as to whether it is participating. So that's really where you want to start, your bank, your local lender, and they should have information on this and be able to point you in the right direction or help you in and of themselves. Okay, who can apply? All businesses, including not-for-profit, nonprofit, veteran organizations, tribal business concerns, sole proprietorships, self-employed individuals, and independent contractors with 500 or fewer employees can apply. Businesses in certain industries can have more than 500 employees if they meet certain SBA employee-based size standards for those industries. Click here for additional details. So if you fall in there, there's a link here that you can go. We'll have a link to this in the description. For this program, the SBA's affiliation standards are waived for small businesses. 1. in the hotel and food services industries. You can click there for more information, or 2, that are franchises in the SBA's franchise directory. So there's more information here. Again, we'll have a link to this in the description. And 3, receive financial assistance from small business investment companies licensed by the SBA. Additional guidance may be released as appropriate. All right, and then let's go back to the last item here, which I think is the actual application, the application for borrowers. Now, this is the thing that they will typically probably be improving, possibly, but these things could change. So here's the actual application. So this is the Paycheck Protection Program. So we have the entity. I'll just read this over briefly just to take a look at the actual application process. So we have the non-profit, the tribal, the independent contractor, self-employed. So self-employed, business name, business primary address, the doing business ad, your trade name, in other words, business TIN or EIN number. So that would be your employer identification number, basically your IRS number. If you don't have a business number, then you would use your social security number if you're a sole proprietor typically. Business, the address, primary contact. So if you're a business, then you have to have the primary contact here, which, that primary contact would basically be, obviously that kind of like the agent of the organization. So the average monthly payroll. So here's where the numbers actually come into play. Here's the average monthly payroll. You may need help from your accountant to calculate the average monthly payroll, and then times 2.5 equals the loan amount. So that's the actual calculation it looks like for the loan amount. Number of jobs here. So purpose of the loan, select, is it payroll? We got rent, utilities, and other. So remember the requirement, you would think, I believe there was a 75%. They're really emphasizing the payroll in order to get the refunded. So in order to get that refundable thing, which is basically giving you, so that's what you're looking for there typically. Application ownership, list all owners of applicant with greater than 20% ownership stake. So you're going to list the owners here with greater than 20%. If questions 1 or 2 below are answered yes, the loan will not be approved. So if question 1 or 2 are yes, it's not approved. So these have to be no. Number 1, if the business or any owner presently suspended, debarred, proposed for debarment, declared ineligible, voluntarily excluded from participating in this transaction by the federal department or agency, or presently involved in any bankruptcy. So in other words, they can't have been expressively removed from this process and can't be in bankruptcy. So bankruptcy could be a key component here and one you want to bring up if you're thinking about this process too. As someone in bankruptcy, well, then you may not qualify for this most likely. And number 2, has the business, any of its owners or any business owned or controlled by any of them ever obtained a direct or guaranteed loan from SBA or any other federal agency that is currently delinquent or has defaulted in the last 7 years and caused a loss to the government. So if you got an SBA loan in the past, defaulted on it, that's a problem. Okay, number 3, is the business or any owner and owner of any other business or have common management with any other businesses? If yes, attach a list of all affiliates and describe the relationship. So they want to know, obviously, if you have different, more complex business entity structures, what's your relationship with them? Because then, they might be applying for the loan twice with 2 different businesses that, are going to the same owners. Number 4, has the business received an SBA economic injury disaster loan between January 3rd, 2020 and April 3rd, 2020. So if yes, provide details. So that's the SBA economic injury disaster loan. So they want to know about the SBA economic injury loan. And then we're going to go questions number 5. Are you presently subject to an indictment, criminal information, arrangement, or other means of which formal criminal charges are brought in any jurisdiction? So you got criminal charges, is that an issue? And then number 6, within the last 7 years for any felony or misdemeanor for a crime against a minor, you have, and so on. And then number 7, I'm a U.S. citizen, I have a lawful permanent resident, and so on. So citizenry. Paycheck Protection Program application form. By signing below, you make the following representation, authorization, and certifications. Representations and authorizations. I represent that I have read the statement required by the law and executive order included in this form, and I understand them. I will comply whenever applicable with the civil rights and other limitations in this form. All SBA loan proceeds will be used only for the business-related purposes as specified in the loan application. To the extent feasible, I will purchase only American-made equipment and products. The application is not engaged in any activity that is illegal under federal, state, or local law. For applicants who are individuals and all associates, I authorize the SBA to request criminal record information about me from criminal justice agencies for purpose of determining my eligibility for programs authorized by the Small Business Act as amendment. And then certifications. The business and each 20% or greater owner must certify in good faith that all the following by initialing next to them. So then they got to initial next to these items, and then you have the signature page. And then we have the Paycheck Protection Program application form. For purposes of this form is to be completed by the applicant and all individuals identified below as submitted to your SBA participating lender. Submission of the requested information is required to make the department regarding eligibility for financial assistance. Failure to submit the information would affect that determination. So we have the instructions for completing this form. For purposes of calculating the average monthly payroll, most applicants will use the average monthly payroll for 2019, excluding costs over $100,000 on the annualized basis for each employee. So we're going to typically using the 2019 number, considering the cap that they have here of the 100,000 when you're making that average calculation. So you're going to have to figure out how to calculate that average. For seasonal businesses, the applicant may elect to instead use an average monthly payroll for the time period between February 15th, 2019 and June 30th, 2019, excluding costs over $100,000 on an annualized basis for each employee. So basically I'm interpreting that to mean if you're seasonal, then you have this time period that you have to have, but then you have to take the average, but you need to annualize. So now you're taking monthly payroll, but you need to annualize the payroll so that you can see if someone would have made over 100,000 in a year, so that you can apply that same cap to that time frame that you're using here. So that could be a little bit more complicated, but that's, you might want an accountant for that. But anyways, for new businesses, average monthly payroll may be calculated using the same time period, January 1st, 2020 to February 29th, 2020. So if you're a new business and you weren't there in 2019, then you may be using January 1st, 2020 to February 29th, 2020, excluding costs over $100,000 on an annualized basis. So you have the same issue if you're taking a partial year. How do you know if someone made over $100,000 a year? You got to annualize it and then figure out if they would have made over $100,000 a year, and then take that into account given the months that you're covering. So the first section and questions 1 through 4 request information about the business. Questions 5 through 7 are to be completed, signed, and dated by each applicant who is an individual, as well as each 20% or greater owner of an applicant business. All parties listed below are considered owners of the applicant business as defined in 13 CFR section 120.10, as well as principals. So for sole proprietorship, the sole proprietor; for a partnership, all general partners and all limited partners owning 20% or more of the equity of the firm. For corporations, all owners 20% or more of the corporation. For limited liability companies, all members owning 20% or more of the company, and any trustor if the applicant is owned by a trust. Paperwork Reduction Act. You are not required to respond to this collection of information unless it displays a currently valid OMB control number. The estimated time for completing this application, including gathering data needed, is 8 minutes. Comments about this time or the information requested should be sent to, and there's your sent it to, Privacy Act. So I won't get into the Privacy Act. Debt Collection Act, right to financial privacy. I won't get into those. Then we have the Paycheck Protection Act, Freedom of Information Act. I won't get into all the acts here. And so that's basically it. Let's take a look at the SBC item here for the disaster loan assistance. Now this is just basically the application process, so I'm not going to get into a lot. This will be a lot smaller of a detail. We're just going to take a look at their application process here. Again, just note in my interpretation of it, you kind of want to see if you qualify for this one first, because you could have more benefit, including the forgiveness of the debt. So let's go over here. We got the disaster loan assistance. This is the SBA, U.S. Small Business Administration. So U.S. Small Business Administration disaster loan assistance. If you type that in, you'll probably be able to find the page here if you were to do a search on that. Streamlined process requirements. SBA is now notice how simple that, like, the benefit of this one is that it's pretty straightforward. They got the application right here electronically, so you can see this process is a bit more straightforward, and we'll just go through the application just to the step 2 just to get an idea of it, because I don't want to fill out a false application on their thing here. So streamlined process requirements. SBA is collecting the requested information in order to make loans under SBA's economic injury disaster loan program to the qualified entities listed in this application that are impacted by the coronavirus, COVID-19. The information will be used in determining whether the applicant is eligible for an economic injury loan. If you do not submit all the information requested, your loan cannot be fully processed. So you want to be diligent to do your best to present all the information, obviously. There's 2 things that are a problem when you deal with, kind of bureaucratic things. One is the time just to get it processed, and 2 is that it always gets kicked back. So you want to, cross all your T's and dot all, get it, and then just if it gets kicked back, you just keep, fixing whatever they tell you and just put it and then do it again. So the applicant understands that the SBA is relying upon the self-certifications contained in this application to verify that the applicant is an eligible entity to receive the advance, and that the applicant is providing this self-certification under penalty of perjury pursuant to the 28 U.S.C. 1746 for verification purposes. The estimated time for completing this entire application is 2 hours. So that's pretty, they're streamlining this thing. That might even be high the way I'm looking at this. But in any case, it's 2 hours and 10 minutes. Although you may not need to complete all parts, you are not required to respond to this collection of information unless it is displayed in currently valid OMB approval numbers. So eligibility entity verification. So this is the actual process. You'd be filling this out now. Choose one. So applicant is a business with no more than 500 employees. So I'm going to choose that one. We're a business with no more than 500 employees. Obviously, this form will change virtually as you choose separate options or different options here. I'll just go through the rest of the options to see them. Applicant is an independent who operates under the sole proprietorship with or without employees or as an independent contractor. Applicant is a cooperative with not more than 500 employees. Applicant is an employee stock ownership plan, an ESOP, as defined in 15 U.S.C. 632, with not more than 500 employees. Applicant is a tribal small business concern as described in 15 U.S.C. 657A B2C with not more than 500 employees. Applicant is a business including an agricultural cooperative, agricultural enterprise, nursing, or producer that is a small under SBA size standard found at this website. You can take a look at that website if that applies to you. Applicant is a business with more than 500 employees that is small under the SBA size standard found. So in other words, if you're over the 500, you may still qualify. Check out this website in order to see if that is in case. Applicant is a private nonprofit organization that is non-governmental agency or entity that currently has an effective ruling letter from the IRS granting tax exemption under 501(c)(d) or E of the Internal Revenue Code of 1954 or satisfactory evidence from the state that the non-revenue producing organization or entity is nonprofit. All right. Review and check all of the following. So second part, you got to check one of these then. Applicant must review and check all the following. If applicant is unable to check all the following, applicant is not an eligible entity. So in other words, all these must apply. You must verify that they apply by checking them off. So applicant is not engaged in any illegal activity. All right, check. No principal of the applicant with 50% or greater ownership interest is more than 60 days delinquent on child support obligations. Check. Applicant is not an agricultural enterprise, e.g. farm, other than aquacultural enterprise, agricultural cooperative, or nursery. All right. Check. Applicant does not present live performances of a sexual nature or derive directly or indirectly more than de minimis gross revenue through the sale of products or services or the presentation of any depictions or displays of parental sexual nature. Okay, check. Applicant does not derive more than 1/3 of gross annual revenue from legal gambling activities. All right, check. Applicant is not the business of lobbying, so no lobbying, check. Applicant cannot be a state, local, or municipal government entity and cannot be a member of Congress. All right, check. So once checked, you'll have the little continuation and you can continue to the second part. Now I'll just read over this. I'm not going to go any further than here, but this will be the business information, which is probably the most complex, and then the business owner's information. So how are you related to the business information? And then additional information, which probably will be somewhat minimal, and then the summary. So on the business side, obviously we need the legal name, the trade name. If the trade name is somewhere different, obviously the little asterisk is going to indicate that these are required fields. The EIN number, which is basically your IRS number from the IRS, your employer identification number. If you do not have one, then the social security number will typically be the case there. Organization type, so what type of organization are you? There is a drop down to choose that. Limited liability company, sole proprietor, C Corp, S Corp, general partnership, limited partnership, and so on and so forth. Is the applicant a nonprofit organization? So you can say yes or no there. Is the applicant a franchise? Yes or no there. Gross revenues for 12 months prior to the date of the disaster. So then you got to get the gross revenue. You may need your accountant for that. Gross revenue for the 12 month prior to the date of the disaster. And then cost of goods sold for the 12 month prior to the date of disaster. So when they're talking about gross revenue, you're talking like the top line, not the net income, not revenue minus expenses. It looks like they're talking about actual revenue line, and then the cost of goods sold being the cost of goods sold line, typically if you have inventory type of sales. It looks like that's what they're looking for. And then rental properties, residential and commercial only. So this would be due to residential rental. Last rents due to the disaster, or lost rents due to the disaster. So any lost rents you'd put there if you're rental properties. Nonprofit cost of operations for 12 months. 12 months, so for the nonprofit, that would be here. Combined annual operating expenses for the 12 months. So now you got your expenses. Basically, this is the income statement, right? We had the gross receipts, top line, the cost of goods sold, goods you sold, and now you've got the other expenses. So combined annual operating expenses for 12 months prior of the disaster for all secular social service provided by the good faith-based entity. And then there's going to be a list of the secular social services provided by the good faith-based entity, compensation from the source received as a result of the disaster. So if you got any compensation due to the disaster in some way, provide a brief description of other compensation sources. So any other sources of compensation you might have. Primary business address, so city, state, and so on. So business address, fax information, contact information, date business established. So when did it start? That may be on your tax return, depending on the type of entity you are. If you're a corporation, it might be there. If not, then you might want to talk to your accountant just to verify that. Current ownership since. So what, did it change ownership? When does the current ownership take place? Business activity. So what does the business do? Detailed business activity. Number of employees. So you're going to have the number of employees, and then you would continue on here. So this form is fairly digitalized, and like I say, you can probably fill this out, looks like in a fairly quick amount of time. So that's just the quick, my, maybe not that quick, but that's my kind of interpretation of it. And so of these two things, like I said, you may be able to go for both of them, but it does look like there's some overlap. If you qualify for this one over here from for the protection from the Paycheck Protection Program, probably has more benefits if you qualify, and I would think that would be your first go-to if you can. If not, then I would go to the other one. If you do qualify for this one, then you can consider, should I do the other one too, in addition to. And again, I think there's some overlap. You might want to do more research on that. So that's just my quick overview. We might go back into it later if there's changes. I expect there will be changes to the law and definitely to the distribution format and the way the form of distribution will look most likely in the future.